Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Die quietly. The command was a whisper, smooth as velvet wrapping a dagger, but the steel pressing against Lysander's carotid artery screamed of imminent violence. There was no time to think, no time to breathe, and certainly no time to marvel at the fact that mere seconds ago, Lysander had been asleep in a studio apartment in Seoul, only to wake up pinned to a silk mattress by a man whose eyes burned with the cold fury of a starless winter night. The blade nicked his skin. A single, warm drop of blood slid down his neck, a stark contrast to the pale, trembling flesh. This was the moment. In the original novel, The Crown of Thorns, this was where Prince Lysander, the sickly, traitorous third prince sent as a sacrificial lamb for a political marriage, tried to stab Duke Kalen Varric and failed. In the book, Kalen snapped the prince's neck before the wedding wine had even settled. Lysander didn't have a weapon. He had something better, the terrifying clarity of a man who knew the script and had decided to burn it. "If you kill me," Lysander gasped, forcing his eyes to meet the abyss of Kalen's gaze, "you will never find the key to the northern vault." My father made sure of it. The pressure on his throat didn't lessen, but the blade didn't slice deeper. Kalen Varric, the butcher of the north, the villain destined to drown the empire in blood, tilted his head. His hair, black as raven feathers, fell over his forehead, shadowing eyes that were a piercing, unnatural violet. "You speak as if you have leverage, little bird," Kalen murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated against Lysander's chest. "You were sent here to die? Your father expects a corpse. I am merely obliging him." "He expects a martyr," Lysander corrected, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "He wants you to kill me, so he has a casus belli to invade the north. Check the wine, Kalen. It isn't poison with arsenic. It's poison with bliss, a slow-acting paralytic. He didn't want me to kill you. He wanted me to incapacitate you so his assassins could enter the keep." For a heartbeat, the room was silent, save for the crackling of the fireplace. The heavy velvet curtains kept out the biting wind of the northern tundra, but the chill radiating from the man hovering over him was far deadlier. Kalen slowly pulled the dagger back. He didn't sheath it. He stood up, his towering frame casting a long shadow over the bed, and walked to the goblet of wine sitting on the mahogany nightstand. He swirled the crimson liquid, sniffing it once. He turned back to Lysander, his expression unreadable, his eyes darkened with a new, dangerous curiosity. "So," Kalen said, his voice dripping with icy amusement, "the lamb bites the hand of the shepherd. Why tell me? Why not let the plan unfold?" Lysander sat up, clutching the silk sheets to his chest, trying to hide the tremors in his hands. He knew the character of Kalen Varric. He wasn't a man moved by tears or pleas for mercy. He was moved by utility, by power. "Because I have no desire to be a martyr for a father who sold me," Lysander lied, or rather, told the truth of the body he now inhabited. "I want to live. And in this frozen wasteland, you are the only monster strong enough to keep me alive." Kalen stared at him. The disgust that usually marred his features when looking at the royals of the South was gone, replaced by something sharper. Something heavier. "Prove it," Kalen said softly. "Drink the wine." Lysander froze. "If it is a paralytic, you will survive," Kalen reasoned, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "You will simply be helpless, at my mercy, for the rest of the night." It was a test. A sadistic, insane test. If Lysander refused, he died by the sword. If he drank, he would be physically vulnerable to the most dangerous man in the empire. Lysander reached out, his pale fingers trembling as he took the heavy goblet from Kalen's gloved hand. He held Kalen's gaze, raised the cup to his lips, and downed the contents in one swallow. The glass clattered to the floor. "Good," Kalen whispered, stepping closer as Lysander's limbs began to feel heavy, his vision blurring at the edges. The Duke leaned down, brushing a thumb over Lysander's wet lip. "Now, little bird, let's see if you are worth keeping in my cage." The first week was a haze of terror and luxury. Lysander wasn't thrown into the dungeons. Instead, he was confined to the master suite of the Obsidian Keep. It was a gilded cage, filled with books, fine clothes, and enough food to feed a peasant family for a month, but a cage nonetheless. The paralytic had worn off by the next morning, leaving him with a splitting headache and a lingering sense of dread. He had survived the night. But survival was not safety. In the novel, Kalen Varick was a man hollowed out by betrayal. He trusted no one. The only way to survive him was to become indispensable. Lysander spent his days frantically writing. He wrote down everything he remembered from the novel, crop rotation techniques that could save the starving North, the location of mineral veins, the names of the spies embedded in Kalen's court. He was waiting for an audience. But Kalen didn't come. Instead, the Duke watched. It started subtly. Lysander would be reading by the window, the gray light of the northern sun illuminating his pale features, and he would feel a prickling on the back of his neck. He would turn to see the door slightly ajar, or catch a glimpse of a dark figure on the training grounds below, staring up at his window. The gaze was heavy. It felt like a physical weight, dragging across his skin. It wasn't the look of a man observing a prisoner. It was the look of a dragon guarding a horde. It wasn't until the 10th day that Kalen entered the room again. He didn't knock. The heavy oak doors swung open, and Kalen strode in, bringing the scent of pine, blood, and cold air with him. He was dressed in riding leathers, mud splattered on his boots. He looked wild, untamed, and breathtakingly handsome. He threw a stack of papers onto the table where Lysander sat. "My spymaster tells me you've been busy," Kalen said, his voice devoid of warmth. "You claim there is a vein of mithril in the ravine of sorrows, a place considered cursed. The curse is a superstition spread by the Southern Church to keep you from mining it," Lysander replied, keeping his voice steady despite his heart leaping into his throat. "Dig there, and you will find enough wealth to fund your army for a decade." Kalen walked around the table, circling Lysander like a predator. He stopped behind him, leaning down so his breath ghosted over Lysander's ear. "And if I dig and find nothing? Then you can hang me from the battlements," Lysander whispered. "I might hang you regardless," Kalen murmured. He reached out, his leather-gloved hand gripping Lysander's shoulder. It wasn't painful, but it was possessive. "You know too much, Lysander. A prince who has never left the capital knows the secrets of the North better than my own council." "What are you?" "I told you," Lysander said, turning his head slightly, risking looking into those violet eyes. "I am yours, if you'll have me." The air in the room thickened. Kalen's pupils dilated. The darkness in his gaze swirled, a tempest of suspicion and hunger. "Mine." Kalen tested the word, as if tasting it. "Be careful what you offer, Prince. I do not discard what is mine. I consume it." He released Lysander abruptly and strode toward the door. "We ride for the ravine at dawn. You're coming with me. If you're lying, I'll leave you to the wolves." The expedition to the ravine of sorrows shifted everything. They found the mithril. It was exactly where Lysander said it would be. The discovery sent shockwaves through the soldiers. They looked at Lysander not as a hated southerner, but as a seer, a good omen. But it was the journey back that sealed his fate. A blizzard struck, a whiteout so severe it separated the vanguard from the main party. Lysander, unaccustomed to riding and weakened by the cold, was thrown from his horse when a shadow beast, a remnant of the ancient wars, lunged from the snowdrifts. He hit the snow hard, the wind knocking the breath from his lungs. The beast, a mass of matted fur and teeth, loomed over him. Lysander squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the end. "At least I tried," he thought bitterly. Then, a roar tore through the wind. Not a beast's roar. A man's. Kalen Varick crashed into the beast, a blur of black steel and fury. He didn't use magic. He used his sword, hacking at the creature with a brutality that was terrifying to behold. Blood sprayed across the white snow, hot and red. When the beast lay dead, Kalen didn't check his own wounds. He turned to Lysander. He stormed over, hauling Lysander out of the snow by the front of his fur cloak. Lysander expected anger. He expected to be berated for his weakness. Instead, he was crushed against a chest plated in cold armor. "You foolish, fragile thing," Kalen hissed into his hair. His arms were trembling, not from the cold, but from adrenaline. "I told you to stay close to me." "The horse." Lysander chattered, his teeth clacking together. It panicked. Kalen pulled back, his hands framing Lysander's face. He pulled off his own gloves, his warm, calloused hands pressing against Lysander's freezing cheeks. The look in his eyes was terrifying. The darkness had deepened. It was no longer just calculation, it was obsession. You almost died, Kalen said, his voice low and dangerous. You almost died where I couldn't reach you. I'm fine, Lysander tried to say, but Kalen silenced him with a look. You are not fine. You are freezing. And you are mine. Kalen lifted him effortlessly, carrying him toward his own warhorse. If death wants you, Lysander, it will have to go through me first. That night, they sheltered in a small hunting cabin while the storm raged outside. There was only one bed. Kalen stripped Lysander of his wet clothes with efficient, impersonal hands, wrapping him in dry furs. But when they lay down to conserve body warmth, the impersonality vanished. Kalen pulled Lysander against him, his body a furnace. Lysander could feel the steady, powerful beat of the Duke's heart against his back. Why? Lysander whispered into the darkness. Why save me? I'm just a hostage. For a long time, Kalen didn't answer. Then, his arm tightened around Lysander's waist, pulling him so close there was no air between them. Because, Kalen's voice was rough, sleep-heavy and honest. You are the only thing in this world that doesn't bore me. And I find the idea of a world without you irritating. It was the most romantic thing the villain had ever said, and it sent a shiver of fear down Lysander's spine. Kalen didn't know how to love. He only knew how to own. And Lysander was beginning to realize that being owned by Kalen Varric was far more dangerous than being hated by him. Months passed. The dynamic in the Obsidian Keep changed. Lysander was no longer a prisoner. He was the Duke's shadow. He sat in on war councils, his soft voice offering strategies that cut deeper than any sword. He managed the estate's finances. He tamed the servants with kindness where Kalen ruled with fear. But as Lysander's influence grew, so did Kalen's possessiveness. He stopped letting Lysander speak to other men. If a guard smiled at Lysander, that guard was reassigned to the wall the next day. If a visiting noble lingered too long on Lysander's hand during a greeting, Kalen's killing intent would flood the room, suffocating everyone in its wake. The gaze was always there, watching, waiting. The breaking point came with the arrival of the southern delegation. Lysander's brother, the crown prince, had come to negotiate a treaty, or rather, to inspect why the hostage wasn't dead yet. The grand hall was filled with tension. Lysander stood by Kalen's throne, dressed in the black and silver of the north, a visual declaration of his allegiance. Brother, the crown prince sneered, stepping forward. You look well. We feared the Duke was mistreating you. Father demands you return to the capital for a debriefing. Kalen remained seated, one leg crossed over the other, a goblet of wine resting on his knee. He looked bored, but Lysander saw the way the stem of the glass was cracking under his grip. I cannot return, Lysander said, his voice ringing clear in the hall. My place is here. As the Duke's advisor. The crown prince laughed. Advisor? Is that what we call bedwarmers now? Come now, Lysander. Stop playing house with the barbarian. You are a Valois. You belong to us. He reached out to grab Lysander's arm. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the hall. Before the prince's fingers could graze Lysander's sleeve, a sword was at his throat. Kalen had moved with supernatural speed. The goblet lay in shards on the floor. Touch him, Kalen said, his voice a guttural growl that made the seasoned knights in the room flinch. And I will send your head back to your father in a box. You dare threaten the crown prince, the brother sputtered, pale and shaking. He is my property. He was, Kalen corrected. His eyes were glowing, the violet consuming the white. Now he is my heart. And if you try to tear him from me, I will burn your kingdom to ash just to warm him by the fire. Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Lysander stared at Kalen's back. My heart. The plot hole of Kalen's irrational attachment was gone. It wasn't logic. It was madness. It was the desperate clinging of a man who had lived in the cold for so long that the first spark of warmth became his god. Kalen turned his head, looking back at Lysander. The darkness in his gaze was absolute now. It was a promise. You will never leave me. Send them away. Kalen commanded his guards, never breaking eye contact with Lysander. And if they return, kill them. That night, the doors to Lysander's chambers were barred. Not from the outside, but from the inside. Kalen paced the room like a caged tiger. The diplomatic incident would start a war. They both knew it. You should have let me go, Lysander said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed. You started a war for nothing. Kalen stopped. He turned to Lysander, his chest heaving. He crossed the room in 2 strides, falling to his knees between Lysander's legs. The great villain, the Butcher of the North, kneeling. He buried his face in Lysander's lap, wrapping his arms around Lysander's waist, gripping the fabric so hard his knuckles turned white. For nothing. Kalen's voice was muffled, shaking with a vulnerability that terrified Lysander more than his rage. They wanted to take you. They wanted to put you back in that snake pit. I could have handled it, Lysander said, his hands hesitating before settling in Kalen's dark hair. Kalen looked up. His eyes were rimmed with red. The darkness was swirling, deep and endless. I cannot handle it, Kalen confessed. I cannot handle a world where you are not within my reach. I have conquered armies. I have slaughtered kings. But the thought of you walking away from me, it paralyzes me. He reached up, taking Lysander's hand and pressing it against his cheek. I am a monster, Lysander. I know this. I am selfish. I am cruel. And I will never, ever let you go. Even if you hate me for it. Even if I have to chain you to this throne. And if I don't hate you? Lysander whispered. The question hung in the air. Lysander leaned down. He had been a doomed side character. A throwaway line in a tragedy. But here, in the arms of the villain, he was the entire world. I don't hate you, Kalen, Lysander breathed, his lips brushing against the Duke's forehead. I chose you. Remember? That first night. I chose the monster. Kalen let out a sound that was half sob, half growl. He surged up, capturing Lysander's lips in a kiss that wasn't gentle. It was desperate. It was the taste of iron and wine and consuming fire. It was a claim stamped onto Lysander's soul. Kalen pushed him back onto the bed, his weight heavy and grounding. He loomed over Lysander, his hair creating a curtain that shut out the rest of the world. Then ruin me, Kalen growled against his lips. Use me, break me, command me, but never leave me. Lysander looked up into those dark, beautiful, terrifying eyes. He saw his own reflection there, not as a victim, but as the only thing that mattered. He wrapped his arms around the villain's neck, pulling him down into the abyss. I'm not going anywhere, Lysander promised. And as the candlelight flickered and died, leaving them in darkness, Lysander realized the truth. He hadn't just survived the villain. He had become the only thing the villain feared losing. And in that fear, they found a love twisted enough to survive the winter. And that is how the Butcher of the North was brought to his knees, not by a sword, but by a surrender. If you enjoyed seeing the mighty Duke Kalen unravel for his prince, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you accept a love that was possessive enough to burn down the world for you? Or is freedom worth more than safety? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.